In this video, we're going to talk about image-based lighting, and this is also known as IBL and HDRI. So images that can get you together, only one, the background for your image, the lighting, and also the reflections. So we're going to see how this technique can be applied here in VRAY for SketchUp, what will be the parameters that we will need, and what will be the tools and the various steps that we need to do to achieve this effect. Now this is kind of a photo montage. It's a similar technique to the one used in augmented reality, where you get your model here, which is your 3D model, and then you place it into a realistic context, a realistic scene. Now the main goal here is to make it look like it's actually there. And we're going to see how to do that. We have a couple of tools and a couple of options to do that. And also we create a plane here to have some shadows, some realistic shadows at the bottom. This is also another technique. So if I hide this, you can see the difference right away. And this is called matte shadow, and it's obtained with a particular material. You can see this looks pretty realistic, but not as realistic as before. And it's used to create shadows on the bottom. Well, of course you can do this also in Photoshop and other graphic design application, but you can do everything here. So let's start. So first of all, we will need some assets. We will need an image, a texture, and we will need a model. Now, first of all, this is the technique called image-based lighting. So everything is based on an image. So the image is fundamental, it's the most important thing. Now, which kind of image can we use for the IBL render? We use HDR. HDR means high dynamic range images or imaging. And this is something that is used also in photography. And you can just check on Google. You can see many examples of differences between standard or conventional image and HDR. Now HDR contains, let's say, more information about lighting and shadows and colors and so on. So it's basically a higher quality picture without going into more technical explanations. So what we need is an HDRI, so HDR Image Texture. So it's gonna be a texture again. So it's like working with materials, but this time the texture is not gonna be applied to a material, but to a light or a particular setting into the VRAY panel. So you can search for HDRI textures and you will find a lot of examples. You will find a lot of websites here that are gonna give you many free HDRI, and you will find JPEG, you will find also other formats, but we are looking for HDR. So in my case, I chose the Polyheaven website. So here I got the marble bust, which I already used in other videos, and you can find here the resolution, the format, and you can download it, but you need to then download it in Blender and then export it from Blender in DAE format. We already saw, again, this in another video. And then always from the same website, if you go to Assets, HDRIs, you will find also a lot of high quality HDRIs. For this exercise, I'm gonna use the Photo Studio Loft All. So here you have a preview of the HDRI, and you also can choose other HDRIs if you want. You can see that you have outdoors, indoors, you have night, you have day. So based on the single image that you're gonna pick, you're going to create a scenario. So the image-based lighting and the HDRIs are so important because with just a single image, you can create everything. You don't need to create a context. You have everything. You have a background, you will have reflections, and you will have also a complex lighting system without adding many lights. You just need one, or maybe you just need none. You just need the image. So this is why HDRI is pretty common and popular also in other 3D software and in other applications. So let's move on. And so I'm gonna download this one to make just a couple of examples. which is gonna be like a daylight, daytime interior, and also a nighttime interior, just to show you how the lighting changes. And you can do that, download whatever you want here from the Polyheaven website. You can also support them. You will find some support links. Okay, now let's get started. So this is a brand new scene here in SketchUp. So I'm gonna get rid first of all of this character. I'm going to bring in my model. So I will go to import and use the DAE file from Blender. And there it is. Now we only need this to create a complex scenario. We just need the subject. So this is pretty useful when we don't need to do an interior design or architecture. We just have one single product. We need to show the product and the material to our client or to our professor, and we will use this technique because it's the faster and the simpler. So first of all, we need to change here the soften edges parameters. We're gonna increase this to, let's say, 90, so it's gonna be nice and smooth. And we will not use the same textures here because we want to see some reflections, so I'm going to use something more reflective, but we're gonna do this later on. Now let's just begin with the standard lighting. So I'm gonna open up the VRAY asset editor and see what the lighting is right now. And I can see here I have a sunlight. So let's create a render and start to modify everything. Okay, now this is the standard exterior lighting that we find in VRAY for SketchUp. So first of all, we're gonna deactivate this. So I will deactivate the sunlight. Okay, and see what's the difference. Okay, we still have some lighting here, and this is already an environmental light, so it's something that is coming from above. It's not something concentrated, focused like the sunlight, but it's something really soft. Okay, and it's basically the skylight. Now the skylight in VRAY, it's similar to an HDRI, this one here, but instead of being a simple texture or a simple image, it's a procedural maps. We already talked about procedural maps and the difference between textures and procedural maps. Now the advantage in an procedural maps is that we can change it with the parameters. We can create a lot of effects right here inside VRAY for SketchUp. And when you use textures instead, we need to use that image. We can modify that, but not in here, maybe in Photoshop, maybe in other software. So to create the HDRI, we just need a simple light. We're gonna need a dome light. So I'm gonna create a dome light, and this is gonna be placed into the scene. Doesn't matter where. Well, let's just move it aside just to avoid confusion. Okay,